Today, we're looking at Robert Oster's Green Green. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, Robert Oster's Green Green is a green ink, no surprise there. To make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, what I do is I do the writing samples. I put the ink into a different pen for a day. I then put it into a Noodler's Ahab with a modified flex nib to take my notes for this video. Now, before we get to the writing samples, let's look at the sciencey bits. Up first is the chromatography, and I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down, and I immediately dunk it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. Generally 10 seconds. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. And what we see is there's no hold on at all along the bottom. It immediately pushes up. We get a very, very light, we get some of the yellow and light greens across the bottom. The yellow separates itself a little bit before we start to see the green come in and a very nice blue line across the top. Now the one on the right I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. And largely it looks the same. The distance traveled moving up is farther, which is a little odd, and it does travel a little farther up this paper through the test, but looking at the bottoms at what would hold on, it doesn't feel like there's very much hold on for this ink at all. Resistance tests are done to see how this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it might be to clean from your pens. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, we see that this ink completely reactivates even after days of being allowed to dry. So do not use this in a situation where you need to be able to highlight notes. This is not a good ink for that. It is good at being able to clean out of your pen well. When we look at what happens with water, it reactivates and pulls almost all of this ink up off the paper. That light green that's left behind, it only had 30 seconds there. Now, Pen Flush does everything that water did and nothing more, which makes me feel that the step towards Pen Flush would not be necessary to clean this out of your pens. Bleach, as would be expected, obliterates it off the page. For the inks I've tested, I've found an average viscosity of 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Robert Oster's Green Green has a viscosity of 1.32, which makes it a very wet flowing ink. It is closer to water, which we see on that bell curve, than normal. It's very much like water that has the viscosity of 1 on this table. To find my average dry times, I use the writing samples done on Clairefontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper with the extra fine and medium nibs. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Robert Oster's Green Green has an average dry time of 10 seconds, making it a pretty fast drying ink. Now, let's look at the writing samples. I picked this ink up in sample form, and to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub. I use a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairefontaine. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 gives, center that frame up, there we go. The 1.1 gives no feather spread, halo sheen, no shade in the 1.1. The extra fine gives no feather spread, halo sheen, and it does give really nice shading throughout all of the writing. It's beautiful. Super light areas in brown, really nice dark areas. Fox goes from really dark to light to dark again. This is lovely shading. 3 seconds to dry. Oh my God, is it fast. I wish I knew my temperature and humidity that day. Since I didn't really start by keeping track of this stuff, I didn't want to screw myself up by starting, because then it's like a whole set of data points, and being a mathy nerd, that would have been something that drove me crazy to not have, so it was sort of easier to just not have it. Medium, no feather spread, halo sheen, beautiful shading all the way through this writing. Really beautiful shading all over. Look at what's going on in quick, light to dark to light. It's lighter across the top than it is on the bottom. The C to K is light, the top of the K is light, the dark of the K is the light of the C to K is light. The top of the K is light. The K bottom part is dark. The brown starts light, gets really dark, gets light, and then dark again. It's beautiful through here. 8 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium show us great color variation, and we got it. And I believe, looking at the smear test, you'd be able to recover. Tomoe River. Other than looking at the scrubby that starts to come a little through, I'm putting it on stupid thick. We get no bleeding. We do get some show through. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. The extra fine is a slightly lighter tone with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, or shade. 11 seconds to dry. The medium, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and we do start to see some shading here. Some nice shading. Fox starts dark, gets light, gets dark again. Jumps, starts light, gets really dark through. Nice. Brown starts dark and gets lighter and gets darker again. Beautiful. 19 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium showed us color variation, although we did not see it with the extra fine. And the smear test says stop writing and smearing on Tomoe River because you can't recover it when you smear on Tomoe River. Rhodia. We get no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 is no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It offers beautiful shading. Beautiful shading. The extra fine, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, beautiful shading all the way through. If you like shading and you like green, you like this ink, it's gorgeous. 7 seconds to dry. Still super fast. The medium, slightly darker tone than we got with the extra fine, with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, lovely shading all the way through. This is why I like green inks. 10 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium show plenty of shading, and we get plenty of shading. The smear test says you can likely recover it, and I believe it. I put this in a Noodler's Ahab with a modified flex just to make it easier to flex, not that it gives it more flex. And we get great shading all the way through it. Just beautiful. It really comes out with a flexy nib. Don't tell me that the Ahab's not flexy. In that, don't bust my bubble, man. That's all I say. You got all the vintage flex. That's awesome. I just can't afford it. I'm a school teacher. Yellow. What does the yellow paper do to it? So the yellow Rhodia gives no bleeding, no ghosting. We didn't expect it. What happens to the tone? What happens to this color when we get it? Well, not a lot. It didn't affect the tone at all. This is a strong ink. It's a saturated color then when it really doesn't get affected by those undertones of paper. Pretty nice, especially considering this ink performs very well. The camera's having more trouble picking up the green on the yellow. It's a tone thing, and there it just got nicer. It's making some auto adjustments. The 1.1, no feather, spread, halo, sheen, but it has beautiful shading through, although it looks darker, and some of the shading comes in the lighter spots. The extra fine has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, but it offers beautiful shading all the way through. It's just gorgeous to look at. It really just nice. 7 seconds to dry. The medium, darker tone than we got with the extra fine, more like what we saw with the 1.1. No feather, spread, halo, sheen, and again, some of that beautiful shading all the way through this writing sample. 9 seconds to dry. The scrubby shows us plenty of color variation that we did get in the writing sample, and the smear test says you can likely recover it. So what happens on the North Books paper, which has been a little troublesome at times? It's got no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1, no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does offer some little shading areas. Nice. Not tremendous shading, very gradual shading. It's pleasant to look at. The extra fine, no feather, spread, halo, sheen. It does offer shading, the same kind of shading that we got with the 1.1, that very gradual shading. It's not a jump in tone. It's a very gradual up. If we look at quick, we can see it turn slowly in its way up. Stop focusing on my hand. Here we go. It turns gradually darker. The brown goes dark and turns gradually lighter. Very pleasant. 2 seconds to dry. Wow, 2 seconds. And we get shading. The medium, no feather, spread, halo, sheen. We do get little bits. It's a darker tone with it being a little darker. Slightly darker, but with that we lose some of the standout shading, but it's still there. Quick. Starts darker, gets that little bit lighter, and gets darker again. Nice. Jumps, starts lighter, gets much darker, gets lighter again. Beautiful stuff. 2 seconds to dry. The scrubby of the extra fine and the medium shows plenty of color variation, and we got it. And the smear test, you can likely recover it. How about field notes? Now we got no bleeding and no ghosting. The 1.1 had no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. The extra fine had no feather, no spread, no halo, no sheen, and no shade. 2 seconds to dry. The medium, no feather. Well, no feather that bothers me. There's a ton of little feathering all over. It's not distracting. It's not a problem. But there is tiny feathering all over. We have no spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. 3 seconds to dry. When we look at the scrubby of the extra fine and the medium, they show us color variation. We did not get the color variation here. The smear test says you can likely recover it. And that is all that I have for the writing sample. Instead of finding inks that look like Robert Oster's Green Green, I would prefer to find an ink that complements the color on the page. Now, I've chosen to go with a brown with this green, a very natural sort of look with thing, and I've chosen Diamine's Dark Brown because they look lovely together. Before I give my opinion on this ink, I would ask, if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if it's your first time here, I would invite you to subscribe. Now, what do I think of Robert Oster's Green Green? I think it has amazing shading everywhere. This is a beautiful green when it comes to its shading. It is fantastic. It can at times seem a little bit light to be able to read back, so I'm not sure how this would affect some of us in a full page of writing. But I don't suspect it's going to be a problem. Again, this shading is amazing. Yes, please. Thanks for watching.